Welcome, everybody, to episode 77 of The Corner Blue. I'm Andres Rico, and I'm here with Hugo Alvarado. And yes, we are back. It's been 2 match day windows since we last spoke. The beginning of the Bolillo era has started. We're in the thick of things with big things coming up on the horizon. Hugo, how are you doing? Yeah, that's definitely top of the list in terms of news. In case you live under a rock, La Selecta was able to get a draw against Suriname at home to make its way to the final round of qualifying for CONCACAF to World Cup 2026. I was nervous the whole time watching the game. Not only was I in enemy territory watching the game from Yucatan, Mexico, fortunately, there was signal out there. I got to watch it on YouTube on a TV with my wife's family all around us, and it was nerve wracking to be watching it. Granted, no one was roasting me. They're more into baseball in Yucatan, so no one was giving me any crap about the game and respectfully allowed me to watch the game from their homes. So shout out to my wife's family for putting up with my masochismo that follows everywhere I go. Like I watched the game against Anguilla on my phone, outdoors under the sun, sweating my off, and then the game against Suriname. I was hoping to see a win. The draw, I mean, it's the result that we needed. But just I feel like the last 4 games, or at least the beginning of the Bolillo era, has been tepid, to put it so eloquently. I feel like it's still the very early stages where I feel like we're seeing a crash course. Bolillo doing his crash course on La Selecta, and you're seeing it through these lineups. I think one of the issues I had in particular was when I saw the preliminary roster for this match day window of qualifiers and then Gold Cup, where the main thing that stood out that really concerned me, I guess you could say, was seeing Joaquin Rivas included, and much respect to him, what he's given to the national team. But he's been playing futsal professionally the last couple of months, and to see him on the roster and with the wrong team that he's affiliated with included, it just made me think, like, was this a copy and paste of, something months ago? Because we haven't seen Joaquin back on the team in a while now. So granted, it was on the preliminary roster, but that just, kind of red flags came up in terms of, what's the thought process going into, and why do we have seemingly filler roster spots on the preliminary squad when there's players that are active that could be called up and have been left out nonetheless. But regardless of that, Uro, I feel like this has been a pretty cool last 3 months. We've been busy. You've gotten to see La Selecta live in the flesh. I was able to see La Selecta live in the flesh. So before we go into what lies ahead, let's reflect back. How was your experience going to see La Selecta in Chattanooga?
Well, it was good. It's always good to be there. Definitely, I agree with you that the rosters overall leave a lot of questions. There's more questions than answers, and Of course, I never criticize them because something that I've learned throughout the years is that every coach has something that they look for in players, and we may not always agree. And I saw that in looking at the reactions from the last game, where some people were saying that Brian Hill is bad and he should never be called again. What was he doing on the pitch? And I was like, seriously, what game were you watching? I mean, I'm not saying that he had the greatest of games either, but to say that he shouldn't even be called, I'm like, okay, we kind of see the game through our own lens. But anyways, I think the best conclusion that I can make out of what I saw in Chattanooga, what I've seen, against Pachuca, against the Dynamo, is that at least for the two games, the crucial two games that we had last week, where we were basically competing for whether to stay alive or not in the qualifiers, I see that Bolillo's bet was on let me call a whole bunch of guys that I'm able to work with day in and day out as much as possible in the microciclos, and it kind of worked. It worked because they did the job. But there is a lot of room for improvement. There are maybe a couple of players that can add to the team. One of the positive things that I saw both in Chattanooga and in the last two qualifiers is that at least in the fitness level, it seems like the team was able to last at high intensity for the 90 minutes, which is a positive thing. We didn't have that issue that we've had with Hugo. We had a lot of the last 30 minutes of the game. The team seemed to run out of fuel. Then Doniga, I think Doniga had a little bit more of a and I know this from internal information, that he also at times played and made some subs based on trying to balance the physical load of the team. So the team sometimes didn't play at very high intensity, high speed, and sometimes that was done on purpose. But against Guatemala, I don't want to say Anguilla because I think that was a different thing. But against Guatemala and Suriname, at least I saw that you could tell that the team had worked together for a while, and that fitness had been a big focus on the preparation towards those games.
We saw the team not walking, not getting super tired at the end against Suriname. I think in part you see that not only because it seems like they've emphasized it publicly that they're working on the fitness, that they observed the lack of fitness when they first came in and how they wanted to deal with that ASAP. But I also think it also has to do with the level of the teams that they've played too. Not as much high press on the other, by the other team. Possession was mostly El Salvador's in the last couple of games. But I feel like it's just a casting session over and over again, even during the qualifiers. Fortunately, against the type of opponents that they had, it worked out. But I think where the real fine tuning can happen is now with Gold Cup looming and coming up. And I really don't know what to expect for the Cup, but I feel like this is where we're going to see who in the squad as is can level up. And that's something that we've repeatedly mentioned because once you start bringing in pieces from the local league or players that don't have as much experience playing international matches against a certain level of opponent, it translates different against Anguilla or Suriname than playing, Canada nowadays, or just the game conditions that exist also in a Gold Cup. We have Guatemala. No, we have Honduras, Curacao, and Canada coming up, if I'm not mistaken, for the cup, and they're gonna expose us in different ways. And I think now that it's a formal tournament, it's more compact, it's more concise, where you have a couple of weeks to try and get some results together, get some chemistry going. I think this is where we're gonna see as close to Bolillo's idea being translated onto the pitch as possible, because I feel like there's been this disconnect, it seems, where I can't even tell you what the system is under Bolillo, because it seems like the mid has been lost. They've been very dependent on the wings, and then on top of that, you've had very influential players like Gil, like Ordaz, only being able to make cameo appearances, especially Gil. This was his first couple of games back in a while since the drama with Doniga. So things still seem to be meshing together. I think I really wish that this hiring would have happened either right at the end of the last qualifying campaign, so that we wouldn't have to be doing this crunch time, or improvising, in the middle of a campaign with everything on the line. Because, like you said, imagine if Suriname would have gotten another goal, or imagine if La Selecta wouldn't have been able to respond with the goal that they scored. Like, what would the panorama be? Like, I think possibly that would have been the end of the Bolillo era after the Gold Cup, and then that's it, and then we move forward. So there's definitely a lot of work to do. I have a lot of questions, and hopefully this cup is able to answer some of them. But like I said, when you're filling up roster spots, heading into what could have easily been the closest thing to a legit camp, right? Where you have the players for weeks at a time, and to fill up that roster with players that are inactive, right? Or players that you don't even give a look at. That to me is concerning. Because we do have some pieces that I think could be intertwined or brought in and see how they do. Considering we're 6 games away, and the only countries in the way are Panama, Guatemala, and Suriname. Like, what better position could you be? There's people saying that it's the group of death. I'm like, for real? Like, y'all are scared of those 3 opponents, considering, the types of qualifying campaigns that El Salvador has gone through in the past. I feel like it's totally feasible, but the improvisation, that's what has me a bit concerned.
I'm not calling it a group of death. I think that there were people who were hopeful that we would get lucky and get what is it? What's there's one island that might be the weakest. Is it
Bermuda?
Bermuda? I think it's Bermuda.
Because they're with Jamaica, Trinidad, and I forget who else. I'll look it up.
Yeah, the reality, it's Jamaica, Trinidad, Curacao, and Bermuda. I think it's the one that only has Caribbean teams. The reality is that at this stage, I don't think there's any easy team, any easy group necessarily. And yes, Suriname has come a long way. Guatemala is someone that we played many times. We know each other really well.
Too well.
And and the format allows for one team to go through. The logic says that Panama is the best team as of recent years. They've been working consistently with Christiansen, and they've played the Nations League final. Basically, they've been performing. They've been doing well for a while. So yes, logistically, you think that they're going to take the first spot. I mean, that could very well be the case, but let's just go back to the last qualifier. We beat them at home, and they struggle to beat us 2-1 at the Rommel Fernandez. Yes, there was, some people may say it was different players. Yeah, some players were different, but I think it's doable. I think everything's possible. I do agree with you that the Gold Cup is would have been the ideal camp. You have this situation where you're away from El Salvador. You have pretty nice fields to train. You have 3 highly competitive games to measure yourself in. It would have been great. I think that 75%, probably 75-80% of the team that's competing at the Gold Cup is going to be the team that will be there in September. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think it might be higher than that. I don't know.
Based on what the pattern has been. Again, I think it's a coaching staff that really values consistency, having a steady base of players that understand how they want to play, that they can control how they're doing in their teams, how they're doing physically, if they're taking care of themselves when they're not with the national team, and so on. I wish and I hope that we can add more players. I think that there are guys like Armando Moreno who can add to it. I strongly believe that every time that he's played for the national team, he did well. Christian Martinez, I think, is another piece someone who brings a lot of leadership, a lot of muscle to the midfield, which is something that we lack currently. Climaco is a very versatile player who can play as a center back or as a left back, especially with Larin's injury. Those are, just to mention 3 players who I think can immediately bring something positive into the current group. And I'm just speaking about those who, I'm not mentioning Zabaleta and Roldan because it's an unknown. So I don't know
the situation there, the stalemate that's been going on.
Right. So, and then after that, I think there are players worth looking at.
Give us a scouting report, Ugo.
Well, if you were to ask me, who would I go for? I will go for Isaac Alemayehu. Of course, that's probably the player that will help us short and long term. And
for those of you who don't know who he is, he's Swedish, Salvadoran, is Ethiopian as well, right? He has all 3?
Yeah.
Who has been called up to youth teams for Sweden. And what's the name of his club? Pardon my ignorance.
Pardon my Swedish. I think it's pronounced Djurgårdens. Djurgårdens.
Nice.
That's how you spell it. Anyways, but he just play against Chelsea. He scored against Chelsea in the Europa. No, the Conference League.
Yeah.
And he had a pretty decent participation in terms of minutes with the team, and he hadn't been called for a while to the Swedish youth teams, but recently they called him to the U21. yes, he can bring a lot to the table. I think someone like Herman Fuentes is worth looking at. It's just the time. You know, we're kind of we there's no if you look at the FIFA windows, there aren't any other than the qualifiers. So, but yes, there are guys out there. The ones I mentioned, the two in Costa Rica, and Armando Moreno, who I think can add to the mix. You know, considering that Harold was called and Harold is playing MLS Next Pro, and I said this before, the level at USL Championship is higher than MLS Next Pro. And Armando has a lot of experience. I mean, he has, you know, he's not a young player anymore. And when he's played for El Salvador, I think he's done really well. So we'll see. Hopefully, you know, we can Bolillo can add some pieces. I think that, you know, he came in emergency mode and he didn't have much time to work. So again, it kind of makes sense to put your focus and your energy on the players that you can
Have access
see,
to. Yeah.
have access to as much as it's feasible, you know, with the local league. But now we have something bigger ahead of us, and I think the Gold Cup. I was thinking about it last night. The Gold Cup is actually it will be a really good measure for us because if you look at it, if you compare the qualifiers in the Gold Cup, in the qualifiers we know the strongest team is Panama. In the Gold Cup, Canada is the strongest of the three. And then you have Guatemala in the World Cup qualifiers. You can pair it with similar to Honduras, right? Because Honduras level in the last couple of years has dropped. I mean, that's been the case with Costa Rica. That's been the case with Trinidad and Tobago. So I think that the Gold Cup will give us a pretty good idea. And then we have Curacao. Curacao is probably at level with Suriname. You know, they both have players in the same leagues with a similar style. So I feel that it will be a good
Both Dutch
test.
colonies.
Yep, it will be a good. It will be really good for the coaching staff to see where we stand
Yeah.
against those teams because we're
Like
gonna.
those would have been smart friendlies
Yeah.
before the qualifiers. And
Correct.
I think the fact that it's on neutral ground, the team's been together for a couple weeks by now and will have been together for a while. I think that's where we're going to see whether the ideas start to come out and translate onto the pitch. Because I've had a hard time figuring out what's going on. I mean, I think the takeaways I get are Cibrian and Julio Cruz seem to be the go-to starters as the center backs. They seem to be working well, but that goal against Suriname, just lazy marking, no one pressuring ball. So I hope the defense is able to clean things up because in a do or die situation, a goal like that is just soul crushing. Then I think where there's the question marks is just it in the mid, which has been the main question mark for years now, where there's different options, but then there never seems to the coach, el entrenador de turno, just never is able to find either the 3 or 4 in the mid and stick with them and get results. Because if anything that we saw with Hugo Perez was just a rotation of players, and just mainly the only main fixture was Chicho pretty much that whole time, and then everything else was a rotation of players. With Doniga, we had Chicho, right? We had the emergence of Cartagena. But again, his style was staying compact, filling up space with people, but not necessarily playing aesthetically nice way of playing. So we never really saw a great buildup with Doniga. It was very mechanized, and it wasn't against. Wasn't it against Suriname that they finally got loose and ended up losing away? I think that was the game, if I'm not mistaken. That they
It
played
was an
on a
island. No, we
yeah.
tied the game, didn't we? We ended up tying the
We
game
played on the
towards the end.
polo field, but yeah, like it was the first game where Loniga kind of like gave the team the green light to play a more free flowing attack, widen out on the pitch, but the result didn't go his way. And we still have yet to see that. And I think part of the answer to that will be finding the right positioning for Enrico, giving him the correct amount of minutes. Because I fortunately was able to go to the Pachuca game back in March. It was my first time in El Salvador in 8 years. And the moment that he went in, he changed the game, playing on the right flank. And considering the few minutes that he had played with Emerson Mauricio, like they were combining super well, especially on the goal that Emerson Mauricio scored off of the Enrico assist. I'm still curious as to why he hasn't been starting. We've talked, on our own, and you mentioned that maybe it was a defensive concern, which I totally get, but I feel like the team looks different when there's a player like Enrico on there. I'd like to see him combine, get minutes with Ordaz. That's something that we've barely gotten to see at all, if any. And we're not going to get that in the Gold Cup at all because Ordaz, I mean, fortunately for him and props to him, he's going to be playing the Club World Cup. But there's just elements that haven't been able to click. That cohesiveness is a word I've been using for years now. That like I want to see it. I know it's right there. It could be right there, but there's just a lot of disjointedness. But that the one goal we scored against Suriname to me showed the potential that's there. Like seeing Jairo being involved in a play where instead of him taking on three players and trying to get a shot, he goes for the touch down the line to Nathan, and then he just cuts and or makes the little square pass to Brian for the goal. That's the type of stuff that I know this team is capable of, feeding off of each other in small spaces. That's our style. That's the way that we should be playing. And so I hope to see more of that. I know there were a couple of plays where Brian had the ball and had Ordaz making a run on the left, and he could have easily played a through ball or a square ball, and they just didn't connect. I think that's just lack of chemistry since they're getting to know each other. But you see them communicating on the pitch afterwards, and I hope that's something that down the line, they can figure out. But it's just not getting that time together is a concerning part. But yeah. I think there's a lot to look forward to with Gold Cup. We'll see if the style, if the squad emerges out of this casting stage and more into like it's go time, let's handle business. And I guess we can hope and look forward to new pieces being brought in. I would even still consider and shout out to a friend of the Corner Blue would be Pablito Puñez, who's just got called up for his first match on his club since his devastating injury last year. And I feel like for these types of matches, a cool head like Pablo, someone with his leadership, even if he sees limited minutes, just by having him on the squad in training on the bench, that's just it's a player coach right there. He's a leader, and I feel like just strategic call ups like that can go a long way, especially in a moment where these players, if they're on the brink of qualifying, they haven't been in that position ever, and nor has Pablo. But his experience, what this team means, I feel like he can project onto the youngsters, and just the squad in general. And be that gap, that bridge between the gap of players based abroad and the local based players too. I think he's just a piece that it needs to be there, and I hope he does get that call up at some point because it's invaluable.
100%. I agree. I forgot to mention his name when I was mentioning a few players. Maybe because he's been out for almost a year. But I agree with everything you said. I think a player like Pablo, I always want on my team
Yeah.
for many reasons. You
Yep.
mentioned that the leadership, the I feel like Pablo is a player that is respected by the local players, by the foreign-born players, and himself being a player born in Miami, but who lived a good amount of time in El
Se ha bañado
Salvador.
con Huacal, so
Se ha
that's why you
bañado con
gotta.
Huacal, con agua helada, eh,
Se le ha
sin
ido la
aire
luz.
acondicionado, se le ha ido la luz. He knows, and he's someone who has always supported the national team. He's never complained about the long trips. Just the leader overall. I think that hopefully he's in good shape. His injury is all healed and he can start getting some minutes. I definitely think that he's a player that I like to have on my team.
I think that's an advantage too, since the season in Iceland is different from most leagues throughout the world. That this dead time in the middle, during the summer, these summer months is when he'll start regaining that fitness leading into September. So I'm optimistic. I really, really would hope to see him back. I think he would just be an invaluable piece for the team. Um, I've also mentioned Granito several times. I was able to watch some of the games that he played with Aguila towards the end of the season. He got a couple goals. He scored his PK, even though Aguila was eliminated. But that's another option that he's always been on the fringe, but he's faded away, then been back on the fringe, and I think he's someone that can add to the midfield, considering we're lacking there. And you mentioned Christian Martinez. I think he's a good anchor, considering Chicho's level has been fluctuated. He's been dealing with the injuries, and we just need that physicality that isn't going to end up with needless fouls right outside the box as as a recourse, because sometimes, because of Chicho's physical limitations, he has to use that type of play and to disrupt the play by fouling, but that always sets us up for the aerial ball, and we can't be doing that anymore. And so I don't know, I'd like to see a midfield that is more destructive in terms of absorbing the ball, and then just more cohesiveness. I think up top we have enough guys. Like I like the idea of Ordaz on the right, Gil as a 9, and you can play Jairo on the left, and there's other players that you can throw into the mix there. But I don't understand why for years we haven't had a consolidated midfield, and it's been, the last time we had one, I feel, was with Lara, because with De Los Goals 2.0, rotations, Hugo Perez, rotations, Doniga, the style didn't go through the middle. And then with Bolillo, we haven't seen that. We have yet to see what the plan is. So that's my hope. If we can consolidate the midfield, I think we have enough on the back line. We have talent on, at the top three if we play with that formation, but we need to consolidate the mid. That's my hope. If we do that, we're sitting pretty, because again, we have Guate, the familiar foe. We have Suriname and Panama in our way. That's doable. I looked it up, so I'll share the info with you. But in terms of the head-to-head, with Panama, they've played 33 times. Guess who is the series winner there? It's Panama. Panama's won 15. They've drawn 8 times, and El Salvador's won 10. Yet there's a lot of hype, or there's at least a lot of clips that I've seen coming out of Panama of how they would prefer not to play El Salvador or what El Cusca means to Panamanian fans. I hope that the players and the staff don't buy into that, porque para mí es puro humo. But, I think you can't lean on history, but we need to invoke the 2008 comeback, just that mentality of even if we're down 3, we can come back, and Panama's been, I wouldn't say a rival because I say our direct rival has always been Honduras, but in terms of Panama's rise, it's come at El Salvador's cost in a way. But like you mentioned earlier, the results that we've gotten there, we've made it hard for them there, and we've made it difficult for them at El Cusca. And I think it's more than a coin flip, with Panama. I think we have to aim for them. Guate, the series is, I think Guate's of the last 18, Guate's won 9, they've tied 4, and El Salvador's won 5. And then with Suriname, we're 4-0 against them. But yeah, I think we have to concentrate on Panama. If you can get to a level where you can defeat Panama, you can defeat Guate, you can defeat Suriname, but it's going to take a midfield.
I think that what's happened in the last 7 years or so, is that midfield is where we have the most options. So I think that's where we get to see more of the different coaching preferences, right? I think there's been some consistencies. There's been Chicho, and I know there's people who say Chicho and 10 more. Personally, I don't see it that way. But Chicho has been gone now for like almost a year from the national team. I think it's been frequent, recurring injuries. But I think that's what happens, is that we have a lot of choices. We went for a while where Chicho wouldn't be moved, and then suddenly Martinez started to step in, and he became a steady player, at least in the defensive midfield position. But then when you look at the wings of the not the wings, but the two wings, we've
The box
on
to box
either,
guys.
yeah, there, Seren was for a while inamovible, that number 8 position. Then Landaverde has done that role a few times. But then where we had the most options has been on either the left or the right side. We had players who can be interchangeable. Like, for example, Ordaz can play on the left side, but I really like him on the right. I really like that cut he makes to the outside, and the good shot that he has. I really like him. I prefer him on the right side. But then on that same position, we had Armando Moreno, we had Josh Perez, Jairo Enriquez. So we've had now with the Alvarado, who's emerging. I like him, not because he's my cousin, but I actually like how he plays.
Wait, for real? Are y'all related?
Nah, I don't know, maybe. It turns out that I might be related to the Portillos. Remember Clavito Portillo, the Portillo brothers? Anyways, that's a long story. Someday I'll share that story, but it's unknown, but I might be. Anyways, I like Elvin Alvarado. I like what he's brought to the game. He's encarador, atrevido. Josh can do a similar role, but so again, it's just that we do have a few options in the midfielder when it comes to players that are more attacking minded. However, there's one player that does the job of a 10, and I don't think we have anyone else, and that's Enrico. just the way he plays and understands the position. I don't see anyone else who can do it. I haven't seen it yet. Um, we've seen it even if he goes in for 7 minutes. In those 7 minutes, we can see how the team changes, how he creates opportunities that there are other players that are very good with the ball, that are very good in the 1v1, but they don't do what he does. They don't do the thing where he can hold the ball, where
Yeah, the ball retention and
he can
managing the
rotate,
tempo.
the rotation that he does, the through balls that he can send. I really love to see him play more. So I do think that on that number 10 position, I feel like he's the only one that we have who naturally plays that position. Not to say that Ordaz can play that role, that Jairo can't do that. Um, but I feel like he feels very comfortable there. And maybe
Yeah.
the other player who can do something like that is Armando. Although Armando, it's a little bit more, he's a little bit more attacking minded. And Armando has things that also I haven't seen any other player in El Salvador has. That thing where the movement before he receives the ball, that he can take on players that way without really having to touch the ball. That passing, almost like he glides, the ball when he passes. I haven't seen any other player. For me, that's why I think he's a player who can
And how
immediately.
how he positions his body too, like
Yes.
when he has to deal with contact from defenders, like the dude's built in a low to the ground, and he can shield the ball well. He can absorb contact or create enough contact for fouls, and without getting injured or anything like that. Like that's another aspect of his game that I appreciate. Is he when we saw him against the U.S., the reason that we did well against the U.S. was plays like his of being able to check, you know, U.S. midfielders and defenders, and stay on his feet and continue the play. Something that we don't see that often is knowing when to lower your shoulder, when to check the other player without creating a foul in any way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so lots of questions, but more than anything, at least there's games on the horizon coming up. I know I'm gonna be at the game against Curaçao. Fortunately, it's in my backyard again, so there's no way I'm missing out on that. Though this time, I'm mainly going in my capacity as a fan. So it's going to be a lot of fun to just be out there, see a game in the flesh again, and see how they fare against a foe that's very similar to what Suriname brings to play, and on a nice pitch. Like there's literally no awful or bad seat at PayPal Park. You're right there, so any ticket you get is super worth it. If you're thinking about it, I would definitely recommend checking a game out there. And this is the perfect time to do it if you're not a Quakes fan. So so definitely do it. And hopefully Ugo would be sick if you're able to come up. That'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we can say hi to some fans, and also maybe I don't know, do like a quick video from out there or something.
Yeah, we did the last game at PayPal Park. That's
Yep.
what we did
Yeah.
live. Yeah.
So yeah, if you have the hookup for the press suite, let me know and I can pull up again with the camera, and we can do a short segment there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Gold Cup. I really want to see things start to settle in, and see Bolillo finally take off as a coach, because I feel like it's been very, very conservative up to this point, and rightly so, considering under the circumstances and what was at play, and he got us to the next round. So, yeah, stuff to look forward to. Things will fall into place, and in the meantime, I gotta start saving money for the World Cup. But I kind of want to go to El Salvador in October, against those games versus Guate and
Guatemala.
Panama. Like those are gonna be some epic games if we're still in it. So yeah, I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten throughout the mini hiatus that we've had the last couple of months. Shout out to Antonio Torres, who was like, all right, there's enough news out there. I'm expecting episode 77. So salute to you, Antonio. Thanks for checking in. And everyone else that has been, interacting with us during matches, venting and sharing their thoughts. We all do it together. We all go through it together. So we salute you for hanging in there. And I think we'll get back to recording once the tournament starts and see how things go from there. And hopefully we get some pleasant surprises throughout. So, anything you want to add before we sign off?
No, just yeah, looking forward to the Gold Cup, and hopefully we can record after each game when possible. I haven't ruled out going to San Jose yet. So.
That'd be sick. That'd be sick. But again, trying times. We appreciate all of you. Hope your families stay safe during these interesting times. Yeah, the best thing we can do is trying to get caught up with it and move on with our lives with as much normalcy as possible. And yeah, stay safe out there, especially all you peeps in SoCal, because I feel like things have been, hyped up in the news, and I know there's things going on beyond just what's on TV. So yeah, just hope everything's all good for all of you, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. So stay safe, and just remember, this kid chose us. So we'll see y'all.